Today's announcement proves that our economy is roaring back. It's coming back extremely strong. The United States economy added almost 5 million jobs. Likewise, Hispanic employment is up by 1.5 million jobs. 3 million more women were employed in the month of June. This is better than a V. This is a rocket ship.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to MAGAnomics. I'm Steve Cortes, Senior Advisor to President Trump's re-election campaign. With me tonight are President and CEO of Job Creators Network, Alfredo Ortiz, and Yvette Benarroch of Affordable Landscaping Service and Design. As always, our great guests will be joining us later tonight. But first, on this Labor Day, when we celebrate the work of the American people, we need to stand tall and cheer about the latest blowout economic report. On Friday, the Department of Labor revealed the fourth massive jobs report in a row. In fact, the all-time records for job creation in our country have been set over each of these last 4 months. There is no doubt that President Trump's great American comeback charges onward. The leader who produced the conditions for the first Trump boom, the greatest jobs market ever for working class labor, is doing it again. The Trump boom 2.0. Here are the specifics. Nearly 1.4 million jobs were added back to the American economy in August, bringing the total growth over the last 4 months to an astounding 10.6 million new jobs. The unemployment rate has now fallen to 8.4%. Yes, folks, you heard that right. The unemployment rate has already dropped well below the 10% level, something that many economists viewed as impossible by even the end of this year. Plus, these jobs are quality jobs, as the payrolls report also detailed an incredible jump in wages, up an amazing 4.7% year over year. Let me put that number in context for you. Consider that the Obama-Biden administration never achieved even one single year of 3% or better wage growth. Not 1 year. But under the leadership of President Trump, before the China virus smashed the global economy and artificially halted our expansion, wages soared. Trump achieved 18 straight months of accelerated wage growth above 3%, with even higher numbers for working class citizens. All Americans did well, but the economic underdogs did the best. The American strivers who had so badly lagged during the slow growth Obama-Biden days. Blue-collar workers, those with less education, minorities, all prospered and leaped to the lead of income gains. And now it's happening again with gusto. And this 4.7% wage growth is hard evidence that our great economic rebuild gains steam. Now, to be sure, we know that a lot of hard work still lies ahead. Many Americans, through no fault of their own, still yearn to get back to work. But we should also rightly celebrate data points that reinforce the upward momentum of this incredible story of American renewal. Speaking of the data, there is plentiful evidence outside of the job situation that also validates the reality of a strong economic rebirth across our land. As I mentioned last week, existing home sales increased by a record 24% in July. New home construction surges too, sending the National Association of Home Builders Index to a fresh all-time high, recovering the losses from the China virus and then some. Those new homes need new appliances, which explains why household appliance purchases has spiked 50% higher so far in this third quarter compared to 2019. On the industrial side, the widely watched ISM Manufacturing Index vaulted higher to levels we haven't seen since 2018, verifying that America's factories power back up. That manufacturing renaissance spurs a flurry of activity for shippers, including truckers. The Wall Street Journal reports that truckers see a huge increase in freight volumes. The average asking price for a mile to book a heavy-duty truck increased from $1.60 in May to $2.22 in August. Folks, that's not just a V-shaped recovery, It's a super V. My guest from 2 weeks ago on this show, successful CEO Andy Puzder, recently said, "We are well on our way to a full and lasting recovery, a return to the prosperity and historically strong job markets that we enjoyed throughout the vast majority of the president's first term." Given all this good news, it's not surprising that stock investors cheered, sending the S&P 500 to new all-time highs just last week. But unlike the Obama-Biden years, the spoils of Trump's economy don't just flow to Wall Street, but also to Main Street. According to the Atlanta Fed's GDP Now model, their statistical forecast now projects that GDP growth for this current third quarter will come in at an astounding 30% higher. So, given all this amazing news, what's the potential downside? Where are the risks? Well, Patriots, I'm here to warn you that this economic boom could end in a heartbeat if we elect the wrong person this November. Joe Biden has already publicly threatened to shut the entire U.S. economy down again. Our country has learned enormous amounts about managing the risks of the Wuhan virus. Medical trends head overwhelmingly in the right direction. For example, hospitalizations in Texas, a recent hotspot, have now declined over 60% from the July peak. We return to work, to school, to life, and we know how to do it safely. But Joe Biden unbelievably threatens to squash all of this momentum and holds over our country the ominous threat of a national shutdown. Such a draconian move would devastate our economy, perhaps even inflicting irreversible harm. We are not going there. We are not shutting down our country. We are also not going backwards to globalism, to the slow growth era of Biden's economic approach to the world, an agenda that exports jobs everywhere and rewards only the connected few of a crony political class in America. We know Joe Biden's economic track record. For decades during his Washington swamp career, he created lots and lots of jobs in China. In fact, Joe Biden spent much of his Beltway career sending American jobs to China, and in return, what did the Chinese Communist Party send us back? The virus. It's imperative that we re-elect President Trump if we want the Trump boom 2.0 to continue. The economic revival that has already begun can accelerate into a second Trump term. Americans grasp this reality, which explains why the president polls so well on matters related to the economy. For example, in the latest NBC News poll, voters report confidence on the economy for President Trump by a wide double-digit margin over Beijing Biden. We simply cannot risk losing all of President Trump's progress to an out-of-touch career politician who has spent 47 years destroying American jobs. We need 4 more years of President Trump, now more than ever. That's what my 2 guests are here to discuss tonight. We have 2 business experts here to attest to what President Trump is doing for the economy and the American workforce. The best way to hear about what the president has accomplished for Americans is to hear straight from them, firsthand. But first, we have a short commercial break, and we'll be right back after this.
I'm ready to go.
This is a crisis.
This is no time for Donald Trump's record of hysterical xenophobia.
Biden's son inked a $1 billion deal with a subsidiary of the Bank of China.
Why are we getting nervous, man?
China is going to eat our lunch? Come on, man. They're not bad folks.
Since the outbreak, the Communist Party has been mobilizing overseas organizations to buy local supplies and send them to China.
The growth of China is overwhelmingly in our interest. What a beautiful history we wrote together. Banning all travel will not stop it.
The president is right. The travel restriction on China, as every public health official we've talked to said, bought the country time.
Hysterical xenophobia. Dear mine. Xenophobia.
Joe.
I complimented him on dealing with China. I'm not going nuts.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.
Kamala Harris ran for president by rushing to the radical left, embracing Bernie's plan for socialized medicine, calling for trillions in new taxes, attacking Joe Biden for racist policies. Voters rejected Harris. They smartly spotted a phony. But not Joe Biden. He's not that smart. Biden calls himself a transition candidate. He is handing over the reins to Kamala while they jointly embrace the radical left. Slow Joe and phony Kamala. Perfect together. Wrong for America.
Welcome back. I'm Steve Cortes, and my first guest tonight is Alfredo Ortiz, President and CEO of the Job Creators Network. Alfredo, welcome to the show.
Steve, good evening. Thank you so much.
You bet. So listen, let's start talking about policy, job creation policy. I know that you were really vital in passing the Tax Cuts and Job Act of 2017. What can you tell us about that process of getting that tax cut done, and also what it has done for American enterprise since?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Steve. Yeah, what an incredibly important program that really was. As you know, really the secret to Trump's success in the economy and the thriving economy was the cut in regulations and really the tax cut. And really that tax cut and the fight that we really kind of led on that was really the people's voice, especially the voices like Yvette that you're going to hear from later, the voice of that small business owner. 30 million small businesses out there, Steve, employing 60 million hardworking Americans. So really the backbone of our country, the backbone of America, and really kind of the lifeblood of entrepreneurialism and free enterprise that we so love in this country today. And that's something that we were really proud of. It really was going around the country. At our peak, we traveled about 39 different states, crisscrossing with our two buses, 50,000 miles, talking to hundreds of small business owners. And again, really providing them with a megaphone and the platform to be able to state their case and what they would be doing with tax cuts and why it was going to be so important for them. As you know, Steve, at one point in our country, under the Obama administration, actually, we had negative entrepreneurialism, right, which basically meant that more businesses were closing than were actually opening. And that was the trend we had to reverse. And frankly, that's why, first of all, Job Creators Network was formed. But more importantly, why we use and really leverage that voice of the small business owner, the backbone of America, to really make that case for the tax cuts.
Right. Well, and Alfredo, you queued it up there nicely for me. On this show, what we do on MAGAnomics is we talk about the economy first from a macro perspective, and you're an esteemed expert from that perspective, from the macro case. But then we also want to get to the micro, which is why we're going to speak to Yvette, and that's our normal formula for MAGAnomics. Let's talk about from 30,000 feet what's happening in the economy, and then let's get all the way down to Main Street and talk to an actual business owner and what are they seeing on the ground. So, Alfredo, you mentioned the Job Creators Network, your organization. Tell us about your organization, how it was founded, what you do.
Yeah, unbelievable organization that was founded by Bernie Marcus, really one of our greatest American dream stories out there. A Russian Jewish immigrant that was born in New Jersey, really, grew up with gangs and really just was, a fighting spirit all along. At 48, Steve, he was fired from his job. He had a vision. Board didn't agree with him, so he was fired at 48. And at 52, he started the Home Depot with just 2 stores in Atlanta. And today it employs over 400,000 hardworking Americans, an unbelievable story. And his concern, though, was that under the Obama administration, with the heavy regulations and the heavy tax load, that there was no way that he could have been able to open up and repeat the success of Home Depot. So that's why he started Job Creators Network. And we really delved into kind of the advocacy work of the small business owner really for the past 5 or 6 years of the organization. And so, I couldn't be more blessed and proud to lead, such an organization with that kind of boss, that kind of leader, a visionary who really just has a heart for this country. And is probably one of the most patriotic folks you'll find. And outside of just the work that he does with Job Creators Network, the philanthropic work that he does in so many different areas. I mean, in Georgia, for example, alone, the aquarium in downtown Atlanta literally reinvented the city of Atlanta.
Right. No, he's an incredible entrepreneur, incredible patriot. He, Ken Langone, there's just unbelievable people who are involved in the formation of Home Depot and all that it's become. But I don't want to just talk about them. I want to talk about you also, Alfredo, about your own background. Because look, these days, I know that you have the ears of some of the most powerful leaders in America when it comes to politics and business. But your story also represents a real story of upward mobility. You weren't born in the corporate boardroom, were you, Alfredo?
Yeah, far from it, Steve. Truly, my life has just been a blessing from God, and really, I have to give so much credit to my mother as well. She passed about 8 years ago, but I have to tell you, the largest influence in my life really came from her. I jokingly say she was the first entrepreneur I ever met. Nobody did a garage sale like my mother, Gloria, did. But really, growing up, grew up in Chula Vista, California. And, there's two sides of Chula Vista, I also jokingly say. There's the Chula Vista side, and there's the Chula Juana side, which is a side closer to Tijuana. That was a tough upbringing. We used to go on trash day, my mom and I, and we would fill up the trunk with aluminum cans and newspapers. We'd run that over to the YMCA, catch it in. That was our grocery money for the week. So to go from that to being the first kid to graduate from high school, from college to grad school, to working Fortune 500 companies in leadership position, owning my own small business, and then just a few weeks ago, standing next to the president on that platform, accepting the commission that I know we're going to talk about in a little bit. Right. Only in this country, Steve, does that happen. I mean, so again, I couldn't be more honored and blessed to be leading this organization, Job Creators Network, because I truly am also living that American dream. And so to be fighting for it really just makes me proud to be able to do that.
Sure. No, it's fantastic. There's so many inspiring stories like that. I'll tell you a personal note, Alfredo, the first time that I ever walked into the Oval Office, it was shortly after the president took office in 2017. As soon as I walked in, it was interesting. I immediately thought of and my father passed away many years ago, but I immediately thought of my dad, of my Colombian immigrant dad, that, I hope he's looking down from heaven and sees that his son is in the Oval Office and a confidant of the president.
It's amazing. It's an amazing feeling. I'm sure he is. And congratulations to all of your successes too, Steve, by the way.
Oh, of course. Now, hey, speaking of success, more important than what's happening for Steve Cortes or Alfredo Ortiz is what's happening for this country. And I want to get your thoughts on the August jobs report, because we just got an absolute blockbuster report out on Friday. And on this Labor Day, it's something for us to celebrate. We added 1.4 million new jobs, bringing the total over the last 4 months to 10.6 million total new hires. In addition to that, Alfredo, and I don't think this is getting enough attention, so I want to highlight it, the wage growth, 4.7% year over year wage growth. That is stellar. So in your opinion, can you tell us your views on this report and what it means going forward for the economy and the American people?
Yeah, well, we know that the left and Biden and Harris and all those are trying to poo-poo over all this kind of report, Steve, but it's impossible to do. A 50% reduction from the peak we just saw a few months ago on the unemployment rate, down to 8.4%. I mean, truly unbelievable when you think about that. And when you look at the jobs overall, like you said, we've added 10 million in the past 4 months, 10 million jobs. Look, we're halfway through it. So, we're not quite there yet. So I don't want to be, as they say, spiking the football. But the success that has happened and occurred in such a short amount of time, frankly, only a president who understands business like President Trump does, I think, could have pulled this off. He understood what it did to make this thing happen. And when you look at, why the success, a lot of it, like the Paycheck Protection Program, Steve, as you and I both know, 51 million jobs were saved because of that. I know Yvette was a beneficiary of that, and I know she'll probably talk about that, the jobs that were saved, at her job, at her business. Right. But again, such a success. And when you think about the record time that this incredibly large government program, $500 billion put out there of assistance to 5.1 million small business owners, Steve. I mean, it's unbelievable. And it was done basically in 10 days time. Right. I mean, unbelievable. Look, were there issues and challenges and some people took advantage of the program? Sure. But on a relative basis, it was a pea size relative to the ocean of benefit that really happened because of that Paycheck Protection Program. And again, I got to give the administration, Secretary Mnuchin, and of course, President Trump the credit, because they pulled off something, quite frankly, that I think any other president would have struggled to try to pull off. And we are seeing this V-shaped recovery happen across all the different levels. Hospitality, Steve, has been hurt the worst through this pandemic. Right. They continue to struggle. We need to continue to do more for that. But when you look at other sectors of the industry and of the economy, They really are coming on strong. And the stock market is literally almost back at record highs. It's unbelievable.
Right. You know, and listen, you make an important point there, Alfredo, when you say that we're not spiking the football. We're not going to pull the George Bush mistake of unfurling the mission accomplished banner, because it's not mission accomplished yet. And we know that. We know that we still have work to do to reclaim the heights of the Trump boom that we were enjoying as recently as the early part of this year. But I also think it's, at the same time, it is proper for us to celebrate the enormous progress that we have.
Absolutely.
And again, this isn't my opinion. This is statistical evidence. The economic data that's coming out is just, frankly, astounding in its optimism right now. And so you mentioned the V-shaped recovery. The president started to use the phrase super V. So I think I've got to take my cues from my boss, and I'm going to start calling it a super V recovery. But if the super V continues for the rest of this year, and we re-elect President Trump, as all of us hopes, obviously that is the case, for the next 4 years of President Trump, what do you think, economically speaking, can be achieved in a second Trump term?
Yeah, absolutely. And Steve, I probably failed to mention the real reason, too, I think, why we have this super V recovery now is because we were so strong going into this pandemic. And I can't emphasize that enough. I mean, remember, record low unemployment, wage growth. I mean, when you look at unemployment across every single demographic group, right, whether it was Black, Hispanic, Asian, I mean, it doesn't matter. It was record low unemployment, record growth, home ownership, was through the roof. And it was because, Obama says, well, there's no magic wand to do this. Well, it wasn't a magic wand. It was just common sense, quite frankly, because that's what President Trump immediately did. Regulations were cut, the red tape was cut, and tax cuts, right? Those were the real reasons that were driving it. And what we're going to do, look, this pandemic, it hit us. Nobody could predict something like that. It's how we recovered, right? An old boss of mine used to say, it doesn't matter how many times, let's say, you even mess up. It's how you get past it that really matters. And we didn't even mess up here. This was something that hit us out of the blue. Sure. But when you look at that, think about it. We basically recognized the pandemic in February, roughly. That's when it hit us. And here we are in September, just literally less than a year later, 7 months later. At the 8-month mark, we may have an actual vaccine. I mean, this is record timing, right? And this is because, for example, Operation Warp Speed, which, quite frankly, Steve, I wish the administration talked more about it because it's unbelievable. Just compared to all the other challenges that we've had in the past, swine flu, you name it, the record speed at which this was done. And that's because President Trump understood one thing: get government out of the way, allow it to be a facilitator, right, of private enterprise and government and other sources to work together, but let innovation do its thing, right? Let the free enterprise and freedoms basically do their thing. And that's exactly what he understood. That's what Operation Warp Speed, frankly, has done an amazing job at. And I think, in a second term, we're just going to continue to see more of that kind of innovation and freedom. For example, in healthcare, you allow innovation to literally take charge. You get rid of so many of these draconian and ridiculous regulations that come with Obamacare that prevent free enterprise to actually take place. You're going to have amazing innovations take place. You're going to be able to have costs come down on healthcare because, frankly, that's the one thing Obamacare never really did. It never addressed the cost because all it is, it kept layering more and more regulations on it. So in so many states, for example, that are run by Republican governors, they've pushed the envelope as far as it could under the federal Obamacare regulations, and they've allowed innovation to take place, and it's been amazing. So I think we're going to continue to see this kind of innovation and this kind of success in a second term. And quite frankly, we're going to see every single person benefit the same way we saw just before the pandemic hit.
Right. And, Alfredo, I really think given the momentum that we have right now in this third quarter, and I believe will certainly last for the rest of the year, if we reelect President Trump, I really think 2021 could just be an absolute record-breaking year economically. I think the sky is the limit there.
Yeah, and by the way, Steve, we got to give the Fed truly in this particular case also some credit because thank goodness they also did listen to President Trump over the past couple years, pushing down and keeping those rates down. I think with that combined with just fantastic thinking on the behalf of the President Trump administration, you're absolutely right. We're going to see a record 2021.
Sure. No, it's a powerful combination. You're exactly right. So you mentioned earlier, Alfredo, the White House Commission on Hispanic Prosperity. Both you and I are honored to serve as commissioners on that body. And it's a brand new organization that is, again, hopefully into the second Trump term, going to work on a lot of important issues, things like educational options for Hispanic families who can't afford private school, a lot of initiatives that we can get done in the coming months and we hope coming years of President Trump. I want to ask your view on the Hispanic vote in this upcoming election.
Yeah, well, overall, when you and congratulations to you also on the appointment. I tell you, Steve, we've got really, really important work to do, especially I think when it comes to school choice. That's something that, you know, I benefited from in my history. My mom believed in that education, and she did whatever she needed to do to make sure that I had that kind of education. And, you know, and we're not talking just college education, right? But just overall, even, you know, there's a lot of great opportunities for vocational schools as well. And we got to make sure we focus on all that. But education really is key. And I think that's one of the fights we're going to have to do there. But when you go back and look at the benefits and how Hispanics were doing under President Trump, again, I mentioned this, truly records were being set in terms of unemployment, lowest unemployment rate on record. When you look at the wage growth, home ownership, for example, amongst Hispanics, you know, 2/3, by the way, Steve, of new home ownership last year was really due to Hispanics and first-time home ownership. And you know what's really, you know, and the left hates this, and I'll tell you why. There's a group called Unidos US, which is a very left-wing organization. They're based in D.C. And they did a poll amongst Hispanics, and guess what came up as the #1 issue? It wasn't immigration, it wasn't all these other issues. It was jobs in the economy.
Sure. Right?
Jobs in the economy were the most important issue, and they understand that President Trump knew what he was doing on this. They felt that growth. They were able to benefit. Latina business owners, for example, the most active group amongst all business owners out there, Latinas were. And so they understood that this president knew what it had to do to put the right ideas in place. Again, lower taxes, lower regulation, to make sure that they could thrive. And so, you know, with that, you know, Hispanics are seen through the smoke screens of the Democrats. I think I just saw a most recent poll, in fact, Steve, that said Hispanic approval rating of President Trump is at 37%.
Right.
Which is fantastic. I'm not surprised. They're seeing the BS, quite frankly, in the smoke screens. They're getting through that. They're realizing that there was only one person that really has done the most for Hispanics of any president probably in recent history, and that's President Trump.
There's a lot of really encouraging polling lately regarding Hispanics. I think we can do even better than that. I think we can actually win the Hispanic vote, but even a number in the upper 30s, lower 40s is probably enough to make the electoral map prohibitive.
I've called 41%, Steve, a year ago, so I'm sticking with that number.
Fantastic. Alfredo Ortiz, the Job Creators Network, thank you so much for being my guest.
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate it. God bless.
You bet. We'll be right back after this.
We turn now to that $350 billion fund to help small businesses and its workers get through the shutdown.
It will be up to Congress to restock it.
But Democrats blocking that move this morning.
They asked for $250 billion in 48 hours. I said, well, I don't think so. They objected, and I congratulate the Senate Democrats.
Speaker Pelosi, what are you going to share with us from your home?
Chocolate candy.
Thousands have been forced to wait for hours at food banks all across the country.
This is chocolate, and then we have some other chocolate here. We just got it restocked with the ice cream.
You don't want to eat up everything all at one time.
I can't do it much longer. I'm trying so hard.
We were, shall we say, enjoying.
Having to admit that, yeah, we're starving, and
I like it better than anything else.
Taping this segment, there are 22 million people out of work.
This specific program is about stopping job losses today.
This is hurting people bad.
Other people in our family look for some other flavors, but
right now it's survival mode. You don't know where that next something else is going to come from.
I don't know what I would have done if ice cream were not invented. I just wonder.
Joe Biden has embraced the policies of the radical left. Trillions in new taxes, crushing middle-class families.
If you elect me, your taxes are going to be raised, not cut.
Amnesty for 11 million illegal immigrants.
Citizenship for 11 million undocumented folks.
Reducing police funding.
Yes, absolutely.
The radical left has taken over Joe Biden and the Democratic Party. Don't let them take over America.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.
Welcome back to MAGAnomics. I'm Steve Cortes, and I'm now joined by Yvette Benarroch of Affordable Landscaping Service and Design in Florida. Yvette, thanks for taking the time on Labor Day to join us tonight.
Good evening, Steve, and thank you for the invitation.
You bet. So listen, before we talk about what President Trump has accomplished for the overall economy, I want to ask you about an issue because I know you're a veteran who proudly served this nation. Thank you so much for everything you've done for us. It's an honor, quite frankly, to speak with you tonight. Democrats and their allies in the mainstream media, unfortunately, have launched some vicious attacks on President Trump using anonymous sources, stating that the president said things that he would obviously never say about our military and our veterans. So I want to ask you, Yvette, as a veteran yourself, what is your view of President Trump? What has he accomplished for veterans like you throughout the country?
Well, I am a U.S. Air Force veteran, very proud of it. I was honored to serve this country, and I stand with my Commander-in-Chief, President Donald J. Trump. He has done more for veterans than any president that, as I can remember. And, you know, he has been a champion for veterans. He has followed through with his commitment and promises to the veteran community. The attack from the Democrats, I'm not surprised that they do that because it's all about lies. And then the mainstream media, it's just shameful and disgusting that they take our military heroes and try to get their morale down by attacking our president. And it's just about politics. So the reality is that we need to remind them, because I think they suffer amnesia most of the time. We need to remind them of the leadership that President Trump has taken. Right. And I have a few things that I can remind them of that the president has done for the veterans community. For example, under President Trump's leadership, Congress approved the 2020 National Defense Authorization Act, which includes a historic defense spending of $738 billion, that's $1 billion, and a much needed pay increase for our troops of 3.1%. That is huge. You know, we go in the military right now voluntarily, and President Trump is making sure that he's taking care of us while we're in the military and also helping us once we come out of the military, because it is something that I don't think, and I personally think that we don't pay too much attention to. We haven't taken care of our heroes after they get out of the military. I mean, we have suicide rates up to the roof. And actually, that's another thing that the president has done, which is secured a record $8.6 billion in funds for mental health programs to try to prevent and end veteran suicide. So overall, this president has done more than anybody I know for the veterans, and for that matter, for all Americans in this country.
Sure. And, you know, Yvette, I think, unfortunately, as despicable as these attacks are, these lies that use supposed anonymous sources, as despicable as they are, I think in a strange way, we can almost take some comfort, because I think it shows us that they can't take the president on regarding his record. They don't want to actually talk about what he's done for the military. So instead, they have to invent a narrative and just hope that this myth will be accepted into reality. But, you know, of course, it won't be. But listen, I do want to turn to the business side of your life, because you're not just a veteran, you're also a business owner and an entrepreneur. So I want to ask you, Yvette, how did you come to start your business? Can you share with us the vision to be an entrepreneur, to be a startup businesswoman, and also just a glimpse into your entrepreneurial story, how it's progressed?
So I'm originally from Puerto Rico, and I moved to Florida 18 years ago. Of course, like most of us come here looking for a better opportunity, a better job, and a better quality of life. So going back to the time that I came here, my father borrowed $1,000 to give to me so I could come to the United States. So I came with just $1,000 and a cousin in Naples, Florida. That's how I ended up here. I got a job. And I met my husband, got married, had my children, and then we kind of like started our landscaping business and grew it. So never in my wildest dreams did I think that I was going to end up being in the green service industry. You know, it's kind of funny because my background is marketing. So when I met him, he's been in the industry for 45 years. And I just didn't want to sit in the office. I'm like a go-getter. I'm a firecracker. I'm all about, hands-on. So I learned the business. I literally went to college to learn entomology and pest control so I could get my license. I went to arborist school so I could learn about trees and how to trim them. I became a landscape contractor. So actually the business runs with all my certifications, which I'm very proud of. And it's been great. I am also a certified trainer for the Green Industries Best Management Practices in Florida, which focuses on educating and training landscaping personnel to do a better job when it comes to the environment. And I'm very proud of that because we have a water quality issue in Florida. And I think actually a more balanced approach like the president wants to take, it's great. It's all about balance. So our company is a full service landscape company. We offer different services from design and installation to maintaining to trimming trees. And of course, the pest control. So I do have to say that it wasn't my dream company because, part of what I do includes pest control. And I don't think dealing with cockroaches and rodents is anybody's, dream.
Sure.
But I have to say that it is more than I ever dreamed of. And I am so proud of my company. I currently employ 49 people. That's men and women.
Wow.
And we have over 500 customers that we consider an extension of our family. So it's been great.
That's fantastic. You mentioned that you employ both men and women, but these businesses, landscaping, pest control, generally are male-dominated businesses. So what's it like to be a female owner in your industry?
Oh, I love it. I think it's great. Even growing up, I was only the only girl in my block, so I'm used to it. But I've learned that it's not about gender. It's more about earning the respect of your peers. And how have I done that is I kind of like educated myself and made sure that I can do anything that I ask my people to do. So they respect me, I respect them, and we're a team. Without them, I couldn't be where I'm at today. And
Sure.
without me, they couldn't bring food to their home. So we're teamwork. And so that's how I see it. And I believe actually that many of the skills that women have, like women's natural desire to build relationships, the tendency to nurture, and a deeper sense of ownership, it just goes with the business world. And the landscaping business is not an exception to that. So I think we bring a lot to the business world.
Well, and that might explain why, Alfredo Ortiz, our prior guest, mentioned this. Latinas are exploding as an entrepreneurial force in the United States. And perhaps those characteristics you mentioned, are some of the reasons why. But I want to ask you, too, about President Trump and his policies and how they relate to your business. So as a small business owner, what has President Trump accomplished to help make firms like yours, small businesses like yours, be able to succeed? If you can give us some examples, including the Paycheck Protection Program.
Okay, so let me start with the tax cuts. That has been like the most amazing thing that he could do for business owners. I've always thought that, if we're able to keep more of our money, we can give more raises to our employees, invest more in our business, and employ more people as we grow. So that has been great for every small business. And the PPP program during this pandemic was a lifesaver. I can tell you, it's very stressful when you have 49 families depending on you. And for example, in my business in particular, we don't get paid until we do the services. So we're always like a month behind on billing. So the uncertainty of if we were going to get even paid for our services, was enough to put us like in a stressful situation with what are we going to do with our employees? What about if we can't, every week come up with the amount of money we need to do payroll? And I don't want to lay anybody off because the reality is that a lot of them, or those that have a second job, didn't have a job because they were mostly in restaurants. So I was their lifeline. I was it. So once that came out, I can tell you I was relieved. All the money that from the program I used for the payroll. So every week they got paid. I was able to keep every one of them. And so I am very grateful to President Trump because I know he's a champion for the American people, and we're very grateful to him.
Okay, fantastic. Now let's talk, unfortunately, because we've got to talk about the other side. After all, this election is a choice. It's a choice of two very starkly different visions, the Trump vision versus the Biden agenda. And so in comparison to President Trump's pro-growth policies that have allowed the economy to grow, allowed businesses like yours to succeed, to stay afloat during the depths of the China virus, Joe Biden actually threatens to shut the economy back down if he's elected. And he also wants to implement disastrous new policies, including the largest tax hike in American history, $4 trillion of new taxes that would punish 82% of all Americans. So, Yvette, as a business owner, how do you think Joe Biden's policies, if God forbid he were elected president, how do you think they would impact the economy generally and your firm specifically?
Oh my God, I don't even want to imagine, because he will literally kill small businesses. He supports increasing minimum wage to $15 an hour, which will automatically increase our labor cost. I mean, that would be a killer right there. And the tax hikes, I mean, we just spoke about how beneficial it was for President Trump to do the tax cuts. And then Biden wants to come back and take that away. And now we have to get taxed to death. So he will kill small businesses. So I am doing everything I can to make sure that President Trump gets reelected.
Well, we all need to work hard. And look, I think the polls are trending in the right direction, but nobody can be complacent at all. We've all got to work hard. We've got to make sure that everyone out there, that you are registered to vote at your correct address. Make sure all of your friends and neighbors and family and people who are Trump supportive, that they are registered to vote. And I'm encouraging people to be a little bit of a pest. You need to pester people to get out there and vote early if they don't want to go physically to the polls, to do it via absentee ballot. So before I let you go, Yvette, I want to ask you a couple fun questions, because I was on your Twitter and it looked like you had some great pictures from Trump flotilla. Were you at one of these boat parades?
Oh my God, yes. So we had a Trump flotilla and a Trump caravan. I have a smart car, a little smart car, and it's all wrapped with an eagle that has the Trump hair. It has Trump 2020, and I drive around with it very proudly. So my car was like in the caravan at first, and then I went to the flotilla, and we had one of the sponsors. They have like this private island, and it was just all about Trump. And I tell you, there was so much diversity there. I mean, we had young people, old people, I mean, all kinds of people there. And everybody is so excited about reelecting the president that I know it's going to be a landslide.
I love it. Now, speaking of excitement, we have a lot of amazing guests on the show. I have to say, though, I think you take the cake as far as background right now for this show. So tell us about you are very Trumpified there. Tell us about your setting.
Yeah, my setting, this is my little office. I have all my, this is always like this. It's not because you were interviewing me. It's full of Trump stuff. I am just so proud of my president. I mean, I moved here. I am proof of the American dream, and I want to make sure that I tell everybody you need to go out November 3rd and vote. And if you can go vote early, get that vote in. Whatever you have to do, we need to reelect the president, because this country is at stake and our future is at stake. So please, please go vote for President Trump.
Yvette, you're an inspiring American. Thank you so much for being our guest tonight.
Thank you so much. God bless you and God bless America.
You bet. Thank you. We need your help to defend our great country against Joe Biden and the radical Democrats. The stakes could not be any higher this November. We need all the patriots at home watching right now to join our fight to re-elect President Donald J. Trump. Here's how you can get involved. Download the new groundbreaking Trump 2020 app, now available on Apple and Android. To stay in contact with us, please text Trump to 88022. If you or your friends, family, or neighbors want to get involved in our fight to re-elect President Donald J. Trump, please visit armyfortrump.com to sign up. And please follow me on social media at Cortes with an S, at Cortes Steve on Twitter. We'd like to thank our amazing guests, Alfredo Ortiz and Yvette Benarroch, for joining us this evening. And a special thank you to all of our supporters watching at home. Happy Labor Day, and we'll see you again next time.